If you do your best work at the last minute, unable to focus until a deadline is looming, then suddenly hyperproductive in the final hours, you're not procrastinating, lazy, or poorly disciplined. Neuroscience reveals you're deadline activated, and your brain requires the urgency and pressure of an approaching deadline to trigger optimal focus and performance. For you, last minute isn't dysfunction. It's when your brain works best. Let's talk about something that makes everyone think you're irresponsible. You work better under pressure. You can't start assignments or projects early no matter how hard you try. When you have weeks to complete something, you can't focus, can't motivate yourself, can't make progress. But when the deadline is hours away and panic sets in, suddenly you're intensely focused, incredibly productive, doing your best work. You've pulled countless all-nighters, finished project in the final hours, submitted work minutes before deadlines, and it always turns out good, often better than things you try to work on early. But everyone tells you this is wrong. They say you're procrastinating, that you're going to fail eventually, that you need better time management, that working under pressure is unhealthy and produces poor results. But your experience contradicts this. Here's what psychology and neuroscience reveal: you're deadline activated. Your brain requires the neurochemical cocktail that pressure creates: adrenaline, cortisol, dopamine, to achieve optimal arousal for focused work. Without deadline pressure, your brain is under-aroused and cannot engage. The approaching deadline isn't your enemy. It's what activates your performance system. Research from cognitive psychology shows that people have different optimal arousal levels for peak performance. The Yerkes-Dodson law describes this relationship. Too little arousal creates poor performance. Optimal arousal creates peak performance. Too much arousal creates breakdown. But crucially, people's optimal arousal points vary. Some people perform best at low arousal. They need calm, plenty of time, no pressure. Others perform best at high arousal. They need excitement, urgency, pressure. Studies show deadline-activated people genuinely require high arousal to focus. Early in a project timeline, when there's no pressure, you're operating below your optimal arousal threshold. Your brain literally cannot engage with the task effectively. As the deadline approaches and pressure builds, you move into your optimal arousal zone where you perform best. Here's what's happening neurologically under pressure. When a deadline is imminent, your body releases stress hormones. Adrenaline increases alertness and energy. Cortisol sharpens focus and memory, and dopamine enhances motivation and reward processing. Brain imaging studies show that moderate stress activates the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for executive function, decision-making, and complex thinking. For deadline-activated people, this stress-induced activation is necessary for optimal cognitive function. Without pressure, your prefrontal cortex is insufficiently activated. The deadline doesn't impair your thinking, it enables it. Let's talk about the ADHD connection. Research shows strong correlation between ADHD and deadline activation. People with ADHD have chronically under-aroused brains. They need higher levels of stimulation to achieve focus. Studies show that ADHD brains are dopamine deficient, and the pressure of approaching deadlines stimulates dopamine release. The last-minute panic you experience might be your brain's way of self-medicating, creating the neurochemical conditions needed for focus. If you have ADHD and work better under pressure, these aren't separate issues. They're connected features of how your brain regulates arousal and attention. Here's a procrastination misunderstanding. When people see you not working until the last minute, they label it procrastination, avoiding work due to anxiety, perfectionism, or poor time management. But research distinguishes between procrastination and strategic delay. Procrastination is irrational delay that creates distress and poor outcomes. Strategic delay is waiting until conditions are optimal for your performance. Studies show that for deadline-activated people, early attempts to work often produce worse results than last-minute work because their brains aren't in the right state. You're not avoiding work. You're unconsciously waiting for your activation threshold to be reached. Research on time perception reveals another factor. Studies show that distant deadlines feel psychologically relevant. Your brain doesn't register them as real or urgent, but as deadlines approach, they become psychologically real and activate motivation. For deadline-activated people, this threshold is closer to the deadline than for others. You literally cannot make a deadline feel urgent until it's imminent. Your brain's time discounting is steeper. Future consequences don't motivate present action until the future is very near. Let's address the quality question. People assume last-minute work is lower quality, but research shows this isn't universally true. Studies on deadline-activated workers show they often produce equal or better quality work under pressure than they do with ample time. Why? First, pressure-induced focus eliminates distraction. You can't afford to lose focus when time is limited. Second, time constraints force decisive action. You can't overthink or second-guess. Third, your brain is optimally aroused. You're in your peak performance state. Fourth, urgency clarifies priorities. You focus on what matters most. Here's the energy management piece. Research shows that deadline-activated people often have inconsistent energy patterns. During low-pressure periods, you feel sluggish, unmotivated, unable to focus. During high-pressure periods, you feel energized, focused, capable. This isn't laziness followed by effort. It's your arousal system requiring pressure to activate. Studies show that some people's energy systems need stimulation to come online, and deadlines provide that stimulation. Research on thrill-seeking and sensation-seeking personality traits shows correlation with deadline activation. Studies show that people high in sensation-seeking require higher levels of stimulation in all areas of life. They prefer exciting, stimulating, intense experiences. Working under pressure provides stimulation that calm, early work doesn't. Your deadline activation might be part of broader need for stimulation and intensity. Now, let's talk about the flow state access. Research on flow, the state of complete absorption and peak performance, shows that flow requires optimal challenge level. For deadline-activated people, time pressure creates optimal challenge. Without pressure, tasks feel too easy or irrelevant, preventing flow. Under pressure, tasks become optimally challenging, enabling flow. Studies show that many people report experiencing flow during last-minute high-pressure work sessions.